right, welcome to Ryan Speltz Presents Inside the Real Estate Agent Accelerator. Today, we've got a great opportunity to learn, because that's what it's all about, with Jennye Hall. She is the growth team lead at Keller Williams. She has a ton of designations, and I'm not going to read them all off because she's going to explain them all to you and what works and what doesn't. So Jennye, I'm just going to pass it to you and say, run with it, and I'll jump in if I've got any questions or commentary. So.
Yeah, please do. First of all, thank you for having me. Secondly, for all the people listening in, please learn from what I've learned. Real estate can be very complex, and there's a lot of places that you can spend money and not spend money. And what we're going to do today, what I'm hoping to do, is walk through the education process of getting into real estate. Real estate takes a lot of work. It takes investment, but it also takes being smart about how you approach it to make it the most effective for you. So, and yes, I'm old and I read off paper. But the very first thing that I wanted to go in is I'm going to go step by step in terms of education and licensing, because not everybody is clear on how to do it. So the first step is, if you decide you want to be a realtor, is the pre-licensing. And in the state of Florida, it's 63 hours of pre-licensing. You can do it live in a classroom, or you can do it online, depends on what your learning style is. But it's a lot of intense information. If you can find a classroom setting, it's going to end up costing you the same either way. But if you can find a classroom setting, you're going to absorb that information better. You're going to be able to bounce questions in real time off of a really good, solid instructor. I can't promote any one real estate school over the other, but search and you'll find a couple that are very good and very solid. So once you've completed your 63 pre-licensing hours, then you've got to sit for a classroom exam. Once you pass the classroom exam, then you're permitted to schedule to take your state exam. I would suggest that you make that window between your classroom exam and your state exam as narrow as possible, because the information is fresh, it's retention, and a lot of it is mathematics that, I hate to tell you, you're not going to probably ever actually use in real estate. But
that's my job, not your job.
There you go. Bam, if I get right. But they're just, it's better to have the information fresh and in front of you. And I definitely would recommend taking the exam in an exam location, as opposed to trying to do it on your computer where your dog is barking, your family needs you. They've decided they're going to do landscaping right outside your front door. Of course, when you're doing that, they're all distractions. The state exam is not hard if you're focused. So that's just a recommendation. So then once you pass your exam with the state, and they will tell you, I'll tell you right now, they're going to give you a pass or a fail. You're not going to know what you did right or wrong. It's a P or an F, kind of like some of those classes we all took in college. So it's like, okay, well, did I do good or not? Doesn't matter. But then there are post-licensing requirements. Some are required by the different associations, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you will have to take some classes that have nothing to do with your post-licensing. Post-licensing is 45 hours in 2 years from the date that your license is granted to you. So here's a little hack if you don't know this, and I'm probably giving away the farm. But there is, and we'll get into some of the different designations, but GRI, which is the Graduate of the Realtor Institute. If you take the GRI 100 series, which is 101, 102, and 103, it will not only complete that part of the designation for you, but it will actually also complete your 45 hours post-licensing. So you can kind of two birds, one stone kind of theory.
Yeah.
And it's very reasonably priced. What I would suggest too is, once you've passed your license, get these out of the way. Because once you start rolling with business and you start rolling with the phone calls and the emails and the text messages and the showings and everything else, your CEs are very easy to fall off the horizon. They're not a part of your focus. I would suggest getting them done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, the CE for me is always a December move for me. Just like pack it in the last 2 weeks I can.
And everybody's different. And I tend to get everything done way at the forefront, probably too early, which is why we'll get into designations later. But the other thing is with CEs, if you choose not to do the GRI thing, check with not only your local association, but also check with surrounding associations. For instance, I'm in Hillsborough County, so I'm part of Greater Tampa Realtors, GTAR. But there are some reciprocity programs where if I have to go to the Pinellas County location or down to Fort Myers for certain CEs, a lot of times they're still going to give you the member rate, even if you're not a member of that association. Look into those before you just shotgun money out of your pocket, if that makes sense. The other thing is, okay, realtor versus real estate sales representative. When you get your license, you're a real estate sales representative. You only can become a realtor when you join an association, pay your dues, and that is paying local dues, state dues, national dues. It doesn't mean you can't do the job, but what it does mean is that you can't, first of all, have access to an MLS if you're not a realtor and paying dues. And you can't use the term realtor when you advertise or when you promote yourself. So if you're not willing to pay the dues and you want to be a real estate associate, that's perfectly fine. That's wonderful. But just understand that there are some limitations in terms of how you can promote yourself as a business entity. And be very careful because they take a really hard line on people that do not follow ethics and code correctly. So just buyer beware. Kathy on tour. Hey, I got to use Latin.
There you go.
There you go.
What is the policing agency then, or how would that go about, like being like who's going to catch that, or who's going to pay attention to that aspect of it?
Every other person that is practicing real estate. And what they can do is they can report you to FREC, and FREC is the Real Estate Commission Office out of Orlando. They are basically the policing agency for ethics and for legal compliance. Anybody can walk by a sign and you have realtor on it, and they look you up because they've just not enjoyed their cup of coffee that morning, and they Google it, and they find out you're not part of an association, they can report you to FREC. Anybody can.
So it's like a self-policed with an oversight organization that brings the hammer down.
Yeah, that's a very good way to state it. Mm-hmm. Okay. But just be very wary, because that's the last thing you want is to be called in front of FREC and have to pay fines because you didn't know or understand what the rules were. Mm-hmm. So they think, and no, I've not been called in front of FREC. So yeah, but I'm real proud. So talked about the post licensings in the 45, the difference between realtor and real estate sales associate. So if you've got any other questions, Ryan, let me know. But then I want to get into all of these lovely designations.
Yeah, this is what I'm excited for, because like we said in the when we were talking before, there's a ton of these designations out, and people are just like spending money and getting them and getting all these letters after their name, and then they don't do anything with those letters, right? It's just, I have all these designations, and they don't know how to promote them or use them properly. So that's what I'm really excited about hearing from you. All
right, cool. So all the designations that I'm going to go through right now, some are designations, some are certifications. I've gotten all of them. Some of them were because of COVID, and I was stuck at home, and instead of becoming a couch potato, I thought, well, let's learn something, Do I use all of them? No, I don't. And some, once you've obtained them, they're yours for life, and there's others where you've got to pay an annual dues for every single designation. So what I want to walk through, and I am just putting this out here, not an attorney, don't claim to be one. This is my personal experience to try to help you out. The first one is the GRI. If there is any designation that you're going to get as a realtor, the GRI is the one to get. It's a long process. There's the 100 series, which is 3 classes, the 200 series, which is 2 classes, and then the 300 series, which is 2 classes. They are all full days. You've got to be able to commit to time away from your life, time away from real estate in order to get it. Why I really would recommend do it as soon as you get licensed by the state. You're not too knee deep into anything. The GRI is a lifetime. It is a national recognition. And in the world of real estate, outside of a formal 4-year university or college, it basically, this is your degree in real estate. It is extremely helpful. They send you updates all the time. If there's anyone that I'd look at that. And the reason being is that most of these designations we're going to go over, other realtors don't know what they are, let alone the general public. So you hand somebody a business card and it's got like 9,000 letters after your name. First of all, you look like alphabet soup. Secondly, I think if you put too many letters behind your name, you start to look like a butthole, to be honest with you. And nobody really knows what they mean because they're very specific. So that's the GRI. The other one, depending on if you want to specialize in representing buyers or sellers, but if you want to do buyers, the ABR, which is the accredited buyer's representative, you do pay annually for, but it really helps drill down in terms of buyer mentality, buyer processes, and it helps create a network across the country. If people need a buyer's representative, they're going to go to the ABR network because they feel it's somebody that's qualified. So that one. The next one is the SRS, and this is for the seller side. This is the seller's representative specialist. Again, you pay this annually every year, but this gives you insight in terms of the listing process. From a business perspective, these, and I have one more, but it's germane to where I live by MacDill Air Force Base. These also create networking opportunities for you to connect with other realtors, with people moving maybe to your area or moving from your area, with people that have the same level of formalized education. And among realtors, it does matter. The general public is going to go, I don't know what that means. But when you can get into it, when you're actually sitting down having FaceTime and you tell them, I took the actual time and investment to make sure that I had the right level of education, these are germane, and then they become valid to your audience. Next one is the MRP. And this is, like I said, germane to me because I live by MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. So, and I'm very heavily involved with military. So this is the military relocation professional. If you want to work with military personnel and understand how they are given their stipend for housing allowances, et cetera, whether they're married, they've got children, the terminology, how to interface with, like I can interface with the base because of what I learned in this designation, then that is worthwhile. It's also annual. So again, you got to look at, am I going to use it? And if you get the designation and you realize you're not getting any value out of it, then that's a personal decision if you want to spend the other $200 to renew it every year. Because all of the renewals are right around $200 to $300 a year.
This is one that I've seen just carry a lot of weight just because of the ability to speak in a military language. It has its own entity, really. Like, I used to work for a VA specific company, and we 65% of our loans were VA loans, and so a lot of that is just learning their language and learning how to speak to them and about what they have going on. And they start throwing out PCSing and a bunch of other things, and people are like, oh, I don't know what that means. And this is one thing that can really like set you apart. If you are trying to work with veterans, definitely go out and get some kind of training, because of the language. Like you're doing a disservice to the veteran if you're not, or to the active service member if you're not trained in the language.
And it is its own jargon. I mean, it is, and the acronyms are not going to make sense to the average person. But knowing that and having that behind you, I will tell you also with military, and I work with a lot of them because of where I live, it validates you in their eyes that you took the time to care enough about their service and how it's structured. And if you want to work with military, get this designation.
Definitely.
Strongly recommended. The next one is SRES, the Seniors Real Estate Specialist. This is also paid annually. If you are going to work with the senior community, and I'm going actually after this going into a joint venture with another realtor and another brokerage, is, you know, seniors have a different level of care and needs than the average buyer or seller do. And many times you've got family involvement, you've got healthcare issues, you also have people that are now facing a different stage of life, and they're scared to death. And understanding where those seniors are coming from, understanding and identifying the independent living facilities, the ALFs, I'm blanking on it, but assisted living facilities, but understanding where their head's at, and also understanding that with a lot of seniors, you're looking at somebody who's been in a house for decades. They've got a lot of stuff, and they got a lot of memories. And those two combined create a very different emotional perspective and understanding that seller. And then it also helps you understand how to integrate the family. We would all like to think that as our parents age or our grandparents have aged, that the whole family would be right behind them. There's not going to be any infighting. We just want what's best for mom and dad. And guess what? Doesn't happen about 70% of the time.
It's very rare.
So if you want to work with the senior population, this is a good designation to have. The next one is the SFR. And this is the short sale and foreclosure resources. It's a lifetime thing. Once you get it, you've got it. But only a very narrow number of us as realtors or real estate sales agents are going to work with short sales and foreclosures and REOs and bank-owned properties. It is an entirely different process, different scheme, but with the way that things are looking and interest rates, and you know, we're in a chicken little the sky is falling mentality right now. And so people are wondering, are we going to have more short sales? Are we going to have more foreclosures? If you want to just simply learn to know how the process works, take the class. You don't have to renew every year. If that's not something of interest to you, save your money and spend it somewhere else. The next one is the PSA, which again is lifetime, and that is the Pricing Strategy Advisor. When I get into the real estate field, I'd left the medical field. I could talk to doctors about hormone protocols and everything else like that, medically related, that quick. But how do you price a house? The reality is with the PSA, it's nice to have, but now many of the tools on your MLS, provided that you pay your dues and have access to it, will do that for you. And common sense will do that for you. That's one of those. The next one is the RENE, which is the Real Estate Negotiations Expert. So not knocking it, it was a lot of fun. It was when things were still, this was prior to COVID, so things were in person. So they took all these realtors and they just passed out numbers, and you got parceled into team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4, team 5, team 6, whatever. And you would go in and debate against each other. So it was like a really high-powered role play. I don't think it's done anything for me. Look into it. It is fun if you've got time. I think at the time it was like $99, and it's lifetime. You don't have to pay over and over again. It's more fun than I think it really is beneficial. Personal experience. The next one is AHWD, At Home with Diversity. And this class, again, once you're done, it's lifetime. But this is beneficial if you're dealing with multicultural situations. If you're dealing with, I don't even know what I'm allowed to say anymore. But whether you're dealing with LGBTQ, whatever, you're dealing with multi-generational situations, it's very good at understanding other people's perspectives. You don't ever have to renew that again either. It's a good learning tool. but there's a book I'm going to kind of promote. It's called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands. It's a big book. I may go get this out of the cover just to show you. But the beauty of it is that it goes through. I used to be taller, I promise. And again, I'm not promoting the author, but it's a bigger book. But it goes alphabetically by country in terms of how they transact business. In some cultures, you can't show the bottom of the sole of your shoe. In some cultures, you don't look them in the eye. In some cultures, they want to kiss on both cheeks, usually the Western Europeans. But this is a wonderful tool to have if you're going to deal with multiple types of populations. And you can go right by country and you can say, oh, look, okay, in the Philippines, what is their norm? What is acceptable? What's not acceptable? So that's just kind of a tangent. It doesn't come with the program at Home with Diversity, but it is a great tool.
Yeah, I was just listening to a book called Emotional Branding, and he was discussing, different subsets of the U.S. population and where they've come from, and expanding on what you were saying, like with this bottom of your shoe or shaking hands, or like you said, color can come into it. I mean, in some cultures, red is not a color that you should be wearing in a business setting, or blue is a color that creates fear in some people in certain situations. So, you can go very, very deep into those cultural norms, and that if that book explains, even 2/3 of what is there, it's a great encyclopedia to have at home. If you're
wonderful.
Working on with different population, for sure.
Yeah, so I would recommend that. I don't remember what the list price was on this book. I don't know. I think it was $30. Worth every dime. And I'm actually dealing with a buyer who lives in Israel, originally from here. She's a U.S. citizen. She's dual citizenship. But she's lived in Israel so long that I've had to go back and read, even though she's a family friend, to make sure that I was addressing business correctly for her. This book was absolutely instrumental. So take note.
You can get it for $14 on Amazon.
Oh, you're so fast. Everybody needs a Ryan in their world.
Yeah, I'm a good Googler, that's for sure.
Wicked Googler. The next one is ePro, and this is basically a certification for advanced digital marketing. It's a lifetime thing. I think it's antiquated now, and as fast as technology is changing, probably a waste of your time.
Yeah, that's always the hard part with technology stuff is keeping up, especially the digital stuff, just keeping up with that stuff. But, if you're inserting yourself, obviously that's kind of like we talked about in the past, like that's where I like to have my specialty in, right? It's like trying to stay on the forefront of the technology and the digital aspect of it. As long as you're staying in that realm and keep following at what's out there, you'll be able to keep up enough to where you're not getting lost and getting left behind.
But this particular certification, you don't get newsletters, you don't get updates. It's just kind of, you got it, and it's just there.
Yeah.
So that personal choice, I wouldn't recommend spending your money there. And then the last one I'll discuss is C2EX, and this was something that came out from NAR, from the National Association of Realtors, right? I guess end of 2019, roughly. And the C2EX, I will tell you that 85% of realtors do not know what this means. And it was the certification of excellence. It takes a lot of time. It's going to be some of the same stuff you're going to learn over and over again. Not going to knock it. I wouldn't do it again. When I say it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of time. And it's going to be the same thing you're going to learn if you go to regular classes that are offered. It's going to be the same thing if you decide to jump on a webinar. It's just you get all these little badge things around their name, and then you get to use their logo, which is nice. But the only people that so far that I have found that know what it is or care are the people I paid to get that certification.
Yeah, the other aspect is that marketing aspect. Like, is there a way to market it to where you're showing what it is? And if you're having to put more effort into marketing around what your certification is than actually marketing the certification, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
And you are absolutely correct with that one. I'm glad I did it. I walked a mile. It helps my team because when they're looking at formal education, we actually talk about these exact same things and explain them and say, I happen to be a learning geek. Not the rest of the world is. I just love to learn. That's one that I don't recommend to my team members that they pursue. Mm-hmm. So going from these designations, here's another great way to become intelligently educated. Work with vendor partners. Don't call them vendors because they're partners. Whether it is what might I mention first? Mortgage lenders, your inspectors, appraisers, anybody, your insurance contacts. Network with those people. Many times, your partners will have learning opportunities. And the goal is not to make you replace them in their job by any stretch. As a realtor, the best term I ever heard, be the source of the source. Don't be an expert that you're not. Know enough to be dangerous where you can follow the conversation or you know what may be asked of you and where to go for an answer, but rely on your partners to be the expert in their field. Build those relationships. Trust me, it's invaluable when you run into a question. And I spent 14 years in property and casualty in a claims related capacity. So an inspection for me is a whole lot of fun. I am the idiot that actually goes up on the roof with the inspector. Mm-hmm. I've been in crawl spaces, you name it. But when somebody asks me an inspection question, just because I know what I'm talking about, but that's not my field, that's not my license, that's not my profession, I know where to go to get an answer or get my customer to the correct answer. Work with those relationships, build them, cultivate them, and support them. But there is a lot of knowledge that you can get from having those close relationships. And it's not having to put letters behind your name, but it's getting educated and then saying, all right, this is my jumping off point, or ask them, okay, at this point I could speak to this point. Where do you want me to jump off this conversation and connect my customer with you? This is your field of expertise. So I can't stress the importance of vendor partner relationships enough. I just can't. So that was really, that's kind of in what we wanted to encapsulate today in terms of the approach to education in real estate. The biggest piece of advice I can give anybody, I give my team, I'm giving with some new realtors I'm cultivating, is if you don't know an answer, it is okay to say, I don't know, but I know where to go or who to direct you to get you the proper information. And no, the answer is not always Google. It is sometimes picking up the phone and calling somebody that really knows what they're doing and asking them and then connecting people. It's really what real estate's all about anyway, connecting people and taking care of people. So anyway, okay, Ryan, hit me with what you got.
You crushed it. With
and only with ginger ale.
There you go. With the different designations, so you went through and you showed which ones you like. Now, as far as creating sort of a marketing plan around some of those, what would you recommend instead of, like you said, listing alphabet soup behind your name, which nobody understands anyway? How would you go about educating the public or educating your fellow real estate agents on what those things actually are? And how would you say, like, those things are advantageous in your marketing. So how could you take them and make them advantageous?
Okay, so we'll start with GRI, which I can't promote enough, but it is a labor of love and it's a lot of time commitment. But GRI, first of all, one of the challenges we have as realtors is we meet with other realtors. And I'd love to say that everybody is cooperative and we're all friendly and we're going to do kumbaya at the end of the day, but it's competition. But when the GRI logo is seen or the GRI designation is seen, other realtors know you know your stuff. It sells itself right in there. When you're talking with a customer, be it a buyer or seller, and they look at this and they say, well, I'll explain what these are. And if you've seen my card, I've got 4. All I list. I don't, the rest of it, nobody cares. But when I tell them GRI, I said, it's basically like getting your master's degree in real estate is what it is. It's everything that you learned and it takes it to a whole new level. And so what that gives my customers a benefit in the marketing is you're dealing with somebody who really knows what they're talking about. And that actually has invested time and money into being the best professional. That's GRI. ABR, accredited buyer's representative. I have that on my card. And then when I go to meet with buyers and I sit down and get their paperwork done, I explain what an ABR is and how much time it took me and that there was an investment involved, but it was so that I could be the best representative for them possible. That's how you market that. Same holds true for the seller's representative. If you're sitting down with a seller and you explain this is seller's representative, again, time, cost, etc., but investment in making sure I'm doing the best job I can for you, giving you the most intelligent information so you can make the decision. Because that's the other thing, as a realtor, we gotta be really careful in terms of telling people how they're gonna spend their money. I always look at my role as I'm the chief operating officer. My buyers or my sellers are the chief executive officers. I'm just steering the ship and giving them as much advice as possible so that when they make the decision on how to spend their money, not my money, that they feel like they're making an educated call. And that's where I market that. MRP, military location, we talked about, that's very specific. That's where I cut it off.
Yeah.
In terms of what I put on my cards. I have it. I have my resume. If somebody really wants to, watch paint dry, they're welcome to read it. But that goes into what each of these designations are if they want to read or learn further. So I will probably keep taking designations and certifications because I love to learn. But those would be the ones that I would stress for people that have value that's easily explainable. Nobody's going to understand ePro. What does that mean? Oh, it means that I clicked on the mouse a whole bunch of times and I learned a whole bunch of stuff, and it actually means nothing. And it's not going to mean and have any value for anybody.
Yeah, it's already outdated.
It was outmoded probably a month later.
Right.
So, yeah. But those would be the ones that I would look in at. Now, if you are and have a heart and really want to focus on the senior marketplace, then the seniors real estate specialist is worth looking at if that's your target market. If it's not, don't worry about it.
I would say that with a lot of these is what is your target market, right? Like you can go out and get all of these and you can help one person in each category a year, or you can go get one of them and help 20 people in that market because that's the market you're targeting, right? Like that's where you're going after it and marketing properly. And that's, if it's one thing that we stress, it's like find a niche or find something that interests you, and being everything to everybody and making these posts of like, reach out to me with your real estate advice or for your real estate advice. And like all of this like general crap that people just throw out there it means nothing, right? So like when you're able to take one of these very specific niche specializations and turn it into a marketing plan, that's where the success is going to come in. It's not, okay, I have this, now people are going to flock to me, right? Like it's just not the way it works.
No, you've got to promote it. And again, it has to be part of it. Just getting letters behind your name doesn't mean anything if you can't actually intelligently and articulately speak to what the customer's need is. And again, I'm not knocking any of them, but at the same time, you can also become very diluted with the amount of education that's out there, and come to this free class and come to this CE and get this designation. And hey, we've got a special for $79 this month. Right. But you'll find yourself diluted to where you're not being effective in your life.
I've got a webinar folder that, like, I just sign up for webinars and they record it and they send it to me. I have 432 emails in there, which means I haven't watched any one of those 432, right? So I sign up for everything, don't watch any of it, and that's just the way it works. But it's one of those things that, like, you know, you say, like, don't go out and search for it, but I would say go sign up for everything. And if you're able to save it, you may need it later on, which would then give you the advantage of already having it instead of having to search out that information later on. So
true.
And
I'm
again,
saying in terms of the degrees or the designations,
for sure, yeah,
cost you out of pocket. You know, when you're starting out in real estate, the reality is nobody knows how broke you're going to be for the first few years.
Right.
You don't. I mean, there's pie in the sky and Property Brothers, and, you know, please, for the love of God, turn off HGTV. But, you know, when
could you repeat that for my wife?
Please, for the love of God, turn off HGTV.
I'll have to clip that part. I'll clip that part.
But when looking at these formal designations, you have to look at what the value is actually going to be. And some of them aren't worth a hill of beans. If you like to learn, and instead of, you know, couch potatoing it and streaming something, and you want to learn something, then go for it. I mean, there's no harm in learning more, but some are outmoded.
Yeah.
And never touched.
Right.
So,
awesome.
So next episode, so hopefully I did good enough and everybody's learned something, and I can get invited back by the Ryan Speltz show. Would love to talk with, now you've got your license, now you know your direction in terms of designations. Now you also know the importance of developing good, strong vendor partners that are specialists in their field. We got that done. Guess what? Now you own a business. What do you do with it?
Right. And I think that is going to be extremely valuable. You know, obviously, that's probably one that we could talk about for 6 hours, right? And we're going to cram it into 30 to 45 minutes. But that is going to be something that not a lot of people are even doing. And I find myself even going down the line going, oh, I should probably be doing that, right? Like, just like recording expenses as I go instead of just like throwing them in a folder and then doing it all at once. So, you know,
having
it's just
piles of receipts and
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm excited to present that one, and we'll get that one out there probably in a couple weeks. I've got one next week that we're going to go roll out a little different direction, and then we'll come back and we'll do that in a couple weeks. But I'm excited to get you back on and discuss, you know, some more high level stuff that what most people aren't looking into.
Well, and thank you for having me. The more educated we are and the better consummate professionals we are in this business, the better we're going to boost each other up. I mean, you know, it's any field has got really strong players and bench warmers. Sorry, sports girl. But what you want to do is be the best and be prepared and be planned. And whatever I can bring to the table to help everybody do that and be a stronger professional, all about it.
Awesome. That's what the group's all about. So I appreciate your time, Jennye, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Sounds awesome.
All right.
Peace out and happy Groundhog Day.